Science in Wonderland explores the fairy tales of science that were written in the 19th century, which tried to get children interested in, excited about, and practicing new kinds of scientific activity. So anything from new paleontological discoveries, new dinosaur bones being dug up, to microscopy, looking into drops of water and finding wriggling creatures there, entomology, the kinds of beings flying around the bottom of your garden, or chemical experiments, mixing things together so they blow up. All of these were exciting opportunities that children had to learn about new kinds of science, and these were stories that were written about them. They argued, the authors, the illustrators who contributed to these often very beautiful productions, that these were the best kind of stories. These had monsters, these had transformations of character, these had fairy-like beings, these had invisible forces. But what was best about these stories was that they showed true knowledge. Some were incredibly popular, some you might well have heard of today, things like The Water Babies by Charles Kingsley, which on the one hand is an evolutionary fable as well as a social and spiritual journey of its protagonist Tom. Others are slightly less well received, shall we say. A book, for instance, such as The Wonderland of Evolution, which was published by two brothers who were vets in their day-to-day practice, Albert and George Gresswell, but they tried to criticise evolutionary theory. So one thing that I think the book really tries to show is there's lots of different types of science, everything from new kinds of technology like the telegraph, to looking at butterflies, to looking down microscopes, to doing chemical experiments. All of these could be talked about in this way. And they also use many different ways to bring fairies, fairy tales and fairyland into scientific writings and pictures. So they might use a figure of a fairy as a little miniature lecturer who'd been living in your library and who could teach you all about the world that you lived in. Or they might use a comparison to a fairy tale. For instance, Sleeping Beauty could be compared to a seed who was waiting for the kiss of sunlight to germinate and grow. Or they could make a comparison between an invisible force of nature, such as crystallization, and a fairy sprite.